Hello, welcome to Local Chats. I'm Lewis Adams, and I'm here with Geoff Brown. How you doing?
Good, Lewis. How are you?
I'm good. For those who don't know who you are, would you like to talk about yourself for a
I never like talking about myself, but I guess I sort of have to in this context. I'm a writer, a publisher, an editor, a teacher. I started off just as a writer, then studied professional writing editing at TAFE, and then opened up an author services company to
Yep.
do some editing and cover design and interior layout for them. And then a year after that, opened up a publishing company, which is what I always wanted to do.
So you started as a writer, but now you're into publishing and all that. Were you planning this from the early on, or did it evolve?
It just sort of happened. I'd always been a writer, and
Yep.
I've had short stories published around the world, 14 or 15 now, and a full-length memoir published to a press in Melbourne. But yeah, I'd always been interested in, I always said to the wife that I really wouldn't mind publishing something that I really want to read.
All right.
So one day she said, "Why don't you?" I said, "Yeah, well, that'll be easy." And yeah, oops.
Was it as easy as you thought, or?
Hell no. Nowhere near. I thought, how hard can it be? Then I realised how hard it can be. A lot of work.
What kind of writing do you like to do?
Originally, I was a reader of horror and a writer of horror. I'd read Dean Koontz and Stephen King to start with, and then sort of veered into the slightly more macabre Lovecraft a little bit. I was never really into Lovecraft all that much, but some of the British writers, Ramsey Campbell, people like that. And yeah, I just wrote what I read. So I was a horror writer and then moved up to realist horror, crossover, sort of anything.
Tell me about your company.
Cohesion. Okay, it's an umbrella company that holds the author services,
Yep.
which is what I started because that's what I learned at TAFE, learned editing and digital layout, print layout and things like that. And then it expanded to become, that was Cohesion Editing and Proofreading, but then we started also trading as Cohesion Press around August of 2013. First book published. When I started, I wanted to publish a series of military horror. I read a lot of military and I read a lot of horror, and I thought they'd make a great crossover. But that took a while to get together because of the scope I wanted it to be. So we published 3 books before that. Our first was Karen Warren, who's a renowned Australian multi-award winning author who
Yep.
I've known through networking. And we published a collection of her short stories, August 2013, and we published another writer whose book had been shut down from the publisher that we originally came out from, Deborah Sheldon. She writes crime noir, which is sort of really dark and crime where everybody's pretty crappy, but the hero's not quite as crappy as everyone else.
The best kind, I
Yeah,
reckon.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. It shows the flaws of humanity really well
Yeah.
because nobody's perfect. It's just some people are slightly better than others. So, at all this time, I was putting together Snafu, which is our main releases at this point. We put out 3 Snafu a year, Situation Normal, All Left Up. It stands for, it's a military acronym from World War II, I believe. And I wanted some great authors in there. And I'd been networking with writers for years and years, and I knew some of the bigger names. So I said to them, hey, do you want to sell me a story, an original novella for this? I solicited 4 of them, Jonathan Mabry, James Moore, Weston Oakes, and Greg Beck, who's an Australian writer. He's the only Australian that was in those 4, because I knew that they all had massive fan bases, and I thought, well, if I can tap into those fan bases, I can drag them over to buy my books as well. So it's sort of pre-packaged marketing, and that was the idea. I thought, well, they might actually sell better than most anthologies. And of course, I had to pay professional rates to these guys, so I did. So it cost us a ton of money as well. But they were all open to the idea. They've known me for years and trusted me to do the right thing. So we put out Snafu in July of 2014. A year ago now, and it's still selling well. We've brought out 3 more since, and the latest one, Snafu Survival of the Fittest, is coming out today.
The day of this recording.
Yes.
Yep. So this is the genuine crossover of the military and the horror.
It's horror-based short stories and novellas set within a military context. So who better to fight giant ravenous beasts than soldiers with big as hell guns?
I guess that's kind of realistic to an extent. Like,
Yeah,
if some monster were to tear apart the city or something, they're not gonna.
You'd have the
They're
army
gonna
at
call
them.
in the military. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, think of Doom, Aliens.
Yeah.
That's military sci-fi. Dog Soldiers is a great example of military horror. That sort of stuff's really popular.
As a publisher, what kind of qualities do you look for in a cohesion manuscript
When they get sent to me,
when they get sent to you? Yeah.
well, they've got to be well proofread.
Yeah.
The initial cover letter needs to be proofread, the initial submission and everything. I look for something that's fast-paced, something that starts off with a strong hook, definitely. You need to hook the readers in within the first page or two at the very most these days. 100 years ago, they'd waffle on for 50 or 60 pages setting the scene before anything happened. That doesn't work like that nowadays. The readers are also watchers of films, and films normally hook you, especially action films and horror films, hook you in somehow right at the start. So I look for something that's well written and well paced and hooky.
You find that film has influenced novels a lot in that way.
Very much, very much. The structure of film writing, which is the three-scene structure, has infiltrated the writing of novels these days to the point where Robert McKee's fantastic textbook called Story about writing for screen is also considered one of the best structural advice guides for writing of narrative fiction. Follows the same sort of, the three scenes that people expect from movies. With the hook at the start, the lead in, then the main action in the middle leading to the climax, and then the final calm down scene where everything is with luck tied up with one little loose end for the next sequel.
I suppose we've had a couple of generations now of writers who have grown up watching movies, even though they'll have a lot of literary influences. Some of their influences might be famous directors or famous films.
Absolutely. I mean, you hear so many writers, classing Kubrick, a few of the other big directors, just as they've watched the films, they've learnt that storyline, and that's how they write. Matthew Riley, he's a big name writer, and he says straight up that he writes as though it is a full-on action-based film right from the start. That's how he sees his books as movies.
I suppose that will help with adaptations and like lots of crossover between the two media as well.
Absolutely, that sort of remediation's so easy now because the structure is already there for a film to be made from the books.
Something else that you're involved with that I thought was very interesting is this asylum retreat. Tell me about that.
Oh yes, the asylum retreats. Started off in 2013, I believe. I was president of the Australian Horror Writers Association at the time, and we wanted to come up with a fundraiser. So I saw these things that were running in America, the Haunted Mansion writers' retreats for a weekend. I thought, we can do better than that. So I called around to all the main haunted attractions here in southern Australia, because I'm based in Bendigo, and there's a vast majority of writers in Sydney and Melbourne. And I ended up working with the people who run the ghost tours over at Arrowdale, the giant asylum, one of the three main asylums in Victoria. We hired the whole place for a weekend. They stopped the ghost tours, and there's 22 of us for the first one, I believe, and we slept in the asylum for 2 nights, and just wrote and explored and went on paranormal investigations and just soaked in the atmosphere, and they're great fun. So we ran a couple more at Arrowdale, and then we switched to Beechworth because the insurance company at Arrowdale have said no sleepovers at this point until they sort out the smoke alarms and such for safety.
Oh, yeah.
So we run them at Beechworth now, and they run twice a year at this point. Probably going to amp them up a little bit next year and run 3 or 4. 15 writers. We get in a name author or a name screenwriter or somebody to come in and do some masterclass workshops, a couple of 3-hour sessions over the weekend. We've got one coming up in October at Beechworth, Halloween weekend, of course, and what better time to stay in a haunted asylum, with Aaron Stearns, the co-writer of Wolf Creek 2, the co-screenwriter.
You go on these yourself as well?
Oh God, yes, I wouldn't miss out on these. Half the fun is going along. Once it moved from the AWA to myself, the AWA decided not to go ahead with them when I stepped down. It was too much organisation, and they decided to narrow their focus a little bit. I kept running them through my own business, and I get paid a little bit. We don't make a great deal of profit because we keep the costs down, but I get paid a little bit to go and stay in a haunted asylum for a weekend. How cool is that?
Tell me about the experience. Like you mentioned that some of the things that get put on, but what's it like to actually sleep in a place where you have an idea of the history?
It is creepy as hell. Yeah. It really is. Because we've got unlimited access to the places. I get given the Grand Master key for the weekend, and we can wander anywhere at any time of day or night. That was especially true in Arrowdale. Beechworth, some of the buildings are owned by other businesses, so we're limited to where we can go, but we still get a great deal of access. It's just got a real sense of overwhelming history to it. They're massive. They're really big places. In their peak, they held 1,500 patients and 400 or 500 medical staff. So you can imagine the size of the buildings. They're just rambling with corridors, with rooms leading off. They're like a big maze at times if you don't sort of know your way around them. The first couple of times we got lost, a a few times, but I sort of know the places fairly well now. But they're just echoey and shadowy, and you hear noises and sometimes voices, and you think, yeah, it's just my imagination. Dear God, please let it be just my imagination. I walked through the men's ward at Arrowdale by myself at 3 a.m. with nothing but a little torch, and
Yeah.
it felt the whole way that there was somebody following me. I'd hear little scuffling footsteps and the occasional tap, tap, tap on a bit of glass or something, and I'm thinking, yeah, that's not getting any further away. That's sort of keeping pace with me as I walk through. It's so atmospheric, and for anybody who writes horror or suspense or history even, it's such a great experience.
Yeah, I can see it being very inspirational.
It is, yeah. You're immersed in the whole feeling of how the place could have been 100 years ago. These things are 150 years old. Arrowdale, 16,000 people died there over its history, and at Beechworth, 9,000 died in its history. Yeah. It's a long and sordid history of the terrible things that humanity can do to itself in the name of research and helping people. I'm doing the air apostrophes here because they weren't really, some of them weren't really helping people. But it's, you can walk to the surgical wards where they were running lobotomies at 3 patients every 10 minutes. They were having races at one point. Some of the doctors, you hear about these legends and spoken myths about the doctors would have races to see who could do the most lobotomies in a day. And you think, well, these are human beings they're performing it on.
Yeah.
And have they really lost themselves that much that they've separated from humanity?
Yeah,
so much?
I'm sure there would have been quite the traumatic effect, not only on the patients but on the staff, and just the longer they spend there, the less grip they'd have, I guess.
Absolutely, and some of the nursing staff, it was too much for them. There's a history of suicides from the nursing staff and some of the doctors throughout both asylums. We found that the staff quarters, which are really big 3-story sort of Art Deco buildings built in the 1920s at both sites, they're the creepiest buildings, really, almost of all. Especially at Arrowdale, the staff quarters there, I hate being in there by myself. Absolutely hate it. It's just the things you hear and see.
Let's move on to the publishing industry of today, which is, I'd say, very different to how it was, say, 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Oh yeah, it's changing so fast at the moment.
You probably say this about a lot of industries, but it's become a lot more fragmented. Is that a good way to put it?
It is, yes, absolutely. It's probably a perfect way to put it. 10 years ago, you had the mainstream publishers, the big publishers, and there were 6 of them at that point. The big 6, they called them. And they ruled the world in regard to releasing 90 to 95% of the books, or the English books anyway. And they also had a lot of overseas markets that then translated and published overseas as well. But then, there were a small amount of people who'd self-publish. Self-publishing's been around for a while. They were just lost. They'd buy a print run of 2,000 of their books and they'd sell 10 of them, and 1,990 would sit in boxes in their garage until the silverfish ate them. But then along comes Amazon with the ebook revolution, and that really opened up to a lot of people. People could self-publish on Amazon as an ebook and actually have the same, not the same chance of being bought, but the same market as the big publishers. They couldn't afford the advertising to match the big publishers, of course, but their book was there for people to search for and find. If they trip over it and it looks good, they might buy it. And then print on demand came along as well, which was an innovation. I'm not sure who got it first, Ingram, which is the biggest book distributor in the world, or Amazon, but they brought in print on demand. Somebody can upload a digital file, a PDF, to a printers, and as the books are ordered, single units or 5 copies are just printed and shipped out to the purchaser. So it got rid of that need to have the big print run where you'd have to spend $10,000 for 2,000 books and have them sitting in your garage for the silverfish. So it made publishing a lot more affordable for people. So all of a sudden there's this big wave of people self-publishing and small press. Somebody who, like myself, wanted to be a publisher and couldn't afford to be until then. All of a sudden they could. They could start a website, get some training, and publish other people using the print on demand, which is quite cheap. Through Amazon it's free to upload, and through Ingram it's $85 to upload the files, and all of a sudden you're not on an even par with the publishers, but damn, if you can market, then you can get your work out there.
Where do you fit in this sort of new market? You're talking about how you've definitely got a lot more opportunity than you would have if you had to try this, say, a decade ago.
I couldn't afford to do this a decade ago, not with the way it was.
Yeah.
The whole new paradigm of publishing allowed me to do this. Okay, with small presses and such, or micro presses, which just fancy words for tiny little 1 or 2 man companies that push out books. There's a whole range of quality. There's the ones who have no idea what they're doing and they grab a stock photo from somewhere and they throw a bit of text on it in Word or Microsoft Paint as a cover. They upload a Word document to Amazon and try and sell the book. All the way through to people like myself and a few others who have got a long term in the industry, are properly trained, qualified, have done courses to work out how to do this and have the connections to do it properly. So we're sort of in the upper tier of the small publishers. There are mid-sized publishers that are well above us with sales that reflect that. But with my network contacts, we've got some real notice because of the people we're publishing. I've had people come to me to publish their collections who have also been published by St Martin's Press and some of the big publishers that distribute worldwide.
So you're kind of like a big fish in a small pond in a way.
Exactly, and I relied on the pre-canned marketing that I was talking about earlier in regard to publishing the right authors to get people's attention. All of a sudden we're selling enough to make a reasonable bit of money out of it, most of which goes back into marketing. I don't take a wage from it or anything. In fact, I put money into the company at times because we spend stuff on marketing.
Do you find that not being a larger publisher, the fact that you're focusing on this niche of military horror helps the brand?
Absolutely. I think that the right decision to make, as far as I can see, was to focus very narrowly on a specific market. And it happened to be a market I like to read myself. And it happened to be a market that was doing quite well. I mean, Jonathan Mabry, who is one of the big writers of military fiction, military horror, he's selling really, really well. He sells hundreds, sometimes thousands of copies of his books a day. He's had a couple of books turned into movies or in the process of being turned into big budget movies. And there's a TV series being made in the US of another of his books. Western Oaks, another guy we've published.
Yep.
He's having one of his, SEAL Team 666, turned into a movie starring and produced by Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. So they're permeating the market. People like that sort of, again, with Dog Soldiers, popular film. Doom, popular film. And a lot of video games. The video gaming generation have grown up with a crossover between military and horror.
Well, there's another, we were talking about movies earlier, but yeah, the video games are really informing novels, and we'll probably see a lot more of that as time goes on.
Absolutely. And the other way around as well. People are taking the concepts from novels and turning them into video games. There's always been a big tie-in. Resident Evil was a big one. That was a game changer, literally, in the video game industry. And there was a series of 7 novels based on the actual games written by S.D. Perry, who happens to be in our Snafu Survival of the Fittest as well.
How much of the market do you find is ebooks today compared to the physical copies?
It varies from the size of the publisher. A lot of the big publishers were really slow on getting on the ebook train. A lot of them actually said, no, this is just a fad, it'll be gone in 2 years, so we'll just concentrate on the print books. 3 years later, they find themselves running to catch up. There's been studies done by some of the larger Publishers Weekly and things like that, and some of the bigger people who study the whole paradigm of publishing. It varies. Sometimes print books drop a little, sometimes ebooks drop a little, but it's about 50-50 at the moment in regard to sales across the board. For smaller publishers like myself, I look at somewhere between 80 and 85% of ebook sales compared to print.
Is it because the ebook is just so much easier for you to distribute?
It is definitely. We can't get our print books into bricks and mortar stores because of the print on demand status that they have. Because of that, they cost a little bit more per unit. And the bookstores only work through distributors, and there's a few distributors here in Australia. Dennis Jones and Associates is the biggest one, and they ask for a very large percentage that covers the bookstore's percentage and gives them a little bit of profit themselves. And with the costing of the print on demand, it leaves about 50 cents per book to be made by the publisher, and a good portion of that goes to the writer.
So to get say the odd physical copy from here to a store, there's just so much of the money pie, I guess, that's being taken from. It's just not worth it.
There is, yeah. I mean, it's good for exposure, but up to this point, I've made a choice not to use the distribution, go to print stores, and to focus on ebook sales because we're reaching the whole world there. Most of our sales are US, with a smaller portion UK and then a tiny portion Australia. It's a bit funny because most Australians still use Amazon US, so you can't really tell how much of Australia is buying or not. but they're gradually being pushed into the Australian Amazon site as time goes on. But yeah, print books are a very small portion of our income, and ebooks are a very large portion of our income.
Do you find it interesting that being Australian-based, Bendigo-based even, that so much of your market is overseas, like in the States?
It's certainly interesting. I expected that.
Yeah.
And that was where I focused. That was where that's the biggest market in the world for English, but for English books in the English language. US is they just there's so many people there and especially with ebooks, they're a splurge buy. If you keep them below a certain price point, people will be scrolling through Amazon. Oh, that's only $4. Okay, click, I'll buy that. So you almost fit into that whole splurge buy thing, which is great because they splurge by us. And that's where good covers come in too. Covers make or break a book, I think, especially in the digital realm.
I think that's one of the first things I heard of, like as advice for people who want to sell their ebooks is just make sure they've got a good cover.
Yep, and that means not doing it yourself unless you're a trained book cover designer.
Yeah, unless you actually have some expertise in that kind of thing.
Yeah, on that very focused, narrow field. You can be a graphic designer, but still don't know all the concepts of great book cover design. You have to have that specific training. So we hire a guy from the UK, and we're an Australian company, sell in the US, and we hire a cover designer from the UK. He's worked with Stephen King. He's put out, he's done a series of covers for the Dark Tower series for King. He's worked with Clive Barker. He's done comic covers for Clive Barker's Hellraiser comic spin-off. So he's quite well known in the industry, and he charges appropriately, but I find that the covers sell. If we didn't have the quality of covers we'd sell a quarter of the books we do.
And before we go, if you could recommend one book from Cohesion, which one would you recommend?
Oh, definitely Snafu, Survival of the Fittest. Definitely.
The new one.
Yep. We've built up. The first one was a learning process. We've got some great reviews from it, and we've put out 2 smaller ones since. But Survival of the Fittest is our big gun that's going to really spread our sales and get us many more customers. We've got some world-class writers in there, and the quality of the stories is just amazing. It's 120,000 words, so 400 and something pages. There's 10 stories in there by 12 authors. There's a couple of collaborative stories, and we've heard from reviewers that it's easily our best yet.
Thank you, Geoff. This has been another episode of Local Chats, and you can find this episode or previous episodes on the website www.thenewlocal.net. Find me on Twitter @thenewlocal, and we've got a Patreon that's set up. There'll be a link to that just below, along with a few links to Cohesion, Geoff, just like anything relevant to this podcast. So check it out. Thank you.